Every plant on this earth was born from the sun. Every seed, every root, every green thing that has ever pushed its way out of the soil did so because light called it upward, except one. There is a single flower in the ancient world that was never promised to the sun. It grows where nothing else will grow, on bare rock, in cold shade, in places the light forgets. And the Greeks believed they knew exactly why. Because it did not come from a seed at all. It came from the mouth of something that was never meant to see daylight. His story begins at the end of a long list. 12 labors, 11 of them finished. Lions, hydras, stables, golden apples. And then Eurystheus, sitting safe behind his walls, gave Herakles the 12th. Not a monster to kill, not a treasure to steal. Something far worse. Bring me the guardian of the dead, bring up Cerberus, the three-headed hound who had never once left the gate he was born to watch. It was not a labor, it was a sentence, because no living man walks into the kingdom of Hades and walks back out again. Before he descended, Herakles did something the storytellers rarely mention. He went to Eleusis. He stood in the hall of the mysteries. He drank what the initiates drank, and he was shown what the initiates were shown. Because even the strongest man alive understood something simple. Strength opens no doors underground. Only knowledge does. And then he went down, past the river, past the ferryman, past the fields where the dead stand quietly in gray light, waiting for nothing, until he reached the throne. Hades did not refuse him. That is the part people forget. The Lord of the Underworld listened to the request of a mortal and agreed. But he set a condition. Take him if you can, but not with iron, not with bronze. No weapon touches what belongs to me. So Herakles laid down the club. He laid down the bow. And he walked toward the gate with nothing but his hands. What happened there was not a battle. It was a wrestling match in the dark. The lion's skin absorbing 3 sets of teeth, the serpent tail lashing at his back, his arms closing around a throat that had never been touched by anything warm. Slowly, impossibly, the hound gave way, and Herakles began to climb. The ascent took days, through the black corridor, through the narrow tunnel that surfaces on the far shore of the Black Sea, near a place mortals would later call Herakles. And with every step, the darkness grew thinner. Cerberus felt it before he saw it. Something on the stone that was not cold. Something on the air that did not smell of ash. Then the tunnel opened, and for the first time since the world was divided among 3 brothers, sunlight fell on the guardian of the dead. He did not roar. He recoiled. 3 heads twisted away at once, straining backward, eyes clenched shut against a brightness they had no name for. The creature who had frightened every soul that ever died was terrified of a color. His whole body convulsed, and from 3 mouths at once, foam came. White, thick, falling in long ropes to the ground. It struck the rock, not soil, not grass. Bare, sun-warmed stone at the mouth of the cave, and the stone should have rejected it. Nothing grows on rock, nothing ever has. But that afternoon, something did. A shoot lifted itself out of a crack in the stone, then a stem, then leaves cut like the fingers of a hand, and at the top, a hood. A curved, closed, deep violet hood, bowed slightly forward, like a figure standing with its face hidden. The first Aconite. The Greeks gave it a name that pointed straight back to the place it appeared, Aconiton, from Aconite, the rocks, because that is where it grew, not in gardens, not in fields, on the hard, barren, unforgiving ground where nothing living had any right to be. It kept the habit it was born with. It has kept it ever since. And it kept something else. Every plant carries a memory of the place that made it. The vine remembers the sun. The wheat remembers the rain. Aconite remembered the underworld. Touch it, and the cold comes first. Not pain, cold. A numbness that begins at the fingertips and moves inward, slow and patient, as though something is walking up your arm. Then the world grows distant. Then the heart forgets its rhythm. The Greeks did not need a physician to explain this to them. They already had a story. The foam of Cerberus had never stopped being what it was. It had only learned to look like a flower. There was one goddess who understood the plant completely, Hekate, keeper of the crossroads, holder of the torch, the one deity who moved freely between the world above and the world below, and was welcome in both. She did not fear Aconite. She cultivated it, and she taught it to the woman who would make it famous, Medea, priestess, sorceress, granddaughter of the sun and student of the dark. By the time she reached Athens, she had lost everything: her home, her brother, her husband, her children, and she had learned one lesson from all of it, that the world does not hand power to women. It has to be taken, usually in a cup. She married the old king Aegeus. She gave him a son, and then a stranger arrived at the palace gate, young, strong, carrying a sword he would not explain. Medea knew, before anyone else in the room, exactly who he was: Theseus, the king's true son, the heir, and in a single evening, her son's future disappeared. So she went to the rock. She gathered the flower born from the mouth of the guardian of the dead, and she prepared a cup for the young man, and placed it in the hands of his own father to give him. Aegeus lifted it. Theseus reached for it, and in that half-second, the old man's eyes fell on the sword at the boy's hip, the sword he himself had buried under a stone 20 years earlier. The cup left his hand before his mind finished the thought. It struck the floor. The liquid spread across the marble, and where it touched the stone, the Athenians later swore, the marble hissed. Medea vanished that night, but the flower stayed. And mortals, being what they are, did not leave it alone. They learned to coat arrowheads with it. They learned to bait it for the wolves that came down from the mountains in winter, which is how it earned the name it still carries in half the languages of Europe: wolfsbane, the plant that kills the thing men are most afraid of in the dark, which was, in a way, exactly what it had always been. And so the pattern completed itself. A creature was dragged out of the underworld against its will. It was shown a world it was never built to survive. It flinched, and from that flinch, from that single moment of a monster being afraid, a flower grew that has been killing men for 3,000 years. The Greeks found something almost unbearable in that. Not that the underworld is cruel, but that it is patient. It does not chase you. It simply waits, quietly, at the edge of a path, bowed forward, hooded, beautiful. So the next time you walk a mountain trail in late summer, and you see a tall spike of deep violet flowers standing alone on the rocks where nothing else has bothered to grow, look at the shape of them. Each blossom is a hood with the face missing. The Greeks had a word for a flower like that. They did not call it lovely. They called it a witness, because somewhere beneath your feet the gate is still guarded, and the thing that guards it has only been above ground once. But there is one question the storytellers never answered. If Cerberus was so terrified of the light, why did Hades ever let him leave? The answer is the coldest thing in this entire story. Because Hades lost nothing that day. He never does. The Lord of the Underworld does not look at the world the way we look at it. He does not see the living and the dead as two different things. He sees one thing, and a date. Every creature that draws breath is already written in his ledger. Not as a possibility, as an appointment. The child in the cradle, the king on his throne, the hero at the height of his strength. They are not going to belong to him. They already do. They simply have not arrived yet. So when Herakles stood before that throne and asked for the guardian of the dead, Hades felt no threat. He felt something far worse. Amusement. Because he understood what the mortal in front of him had not. Cerberus would come back, not because he would be returned, because there is nowhere else in existence for him to go. and the man dragging him toward the surface, the strongest mortal who has ever lived, who tore a lion apart with his hands, who out-wrestled a monster in the dark. That man had a date in the ledger too. Hades did not refuse him because he did not need to. He watched Herakles climb toward the light, and felt no anger, only patience, the patience of a creditor who has already read the end of the contract. Take him, carry him into the sunlight, show him to your king, and then bring me both of you. He was not surrendering the guardian of the gate. He was lending him to a man who was also on loan. And that is the meaning the Greeks buried inside the flower. Not that death is cruel, not that death is coming, but that death does not need to come at all. It is already here. Standing on the rock beside the path, small, purple, bowed forward, waiting for a date that was written before you were born. So the story does not end with a monster. It ends with a debt, and there is only one being in all of creation who has never appeared in that ledger, who has no date, and who therefore has nothing Hades can ever take. She was not dragged down. She made a bargain with him anyway. That is a story for another time.